Full transparency, I do not want to be at the tiny house this morning at all. And I'm kind of already regretting saying that I'm going to upload every single day of December because it's a real challenge. And at the same time, a challenge is enjoyable and there's a goal that you want to achieve. But the only issue with that is it's nice having the thought of a challenge and it's nice feeling motivated, inspired, all of these things. It is important. But the consistency and the relentlessness of constantly turning up for yourself, that is what brings it into reality. This uploading a YouTube video every single day is way more difficult than I thought it would be. And in fact, I've started making efficiencies in the process of uploading the videos. For example, one thing that I've started doing is pressing export the second that I get into my car, because the New Forest is the absolute middle of nowhere and therefore every single person has super bad internet. So I had the idea, why don't I look up where all of the 5G towers are? Now, after looking at that map, I decided I'm going to drive to each and every single one of these 5G towers and run an internet speed test. And a majority of them were awful, except for this one that is in a Sainsbury's car park. And honestly, is the fastest internet I've ever seen anywhere in the world. I can upload an entire YouTube video in 15 seconds. I've never seen anything like it. So that is making my life a lot easier. The only issue with that is I've got to drive every single day to go and upload this. But I've got to do what I've got to do because I don't have a lease line. And that is something that I really want to get in the future, but it does cost an absolute fortune. Actually, I could get Starlink, but I don't know if that's actually a thing in England. Well, it must be because it's satellites and they're in the sky, so the sky is above all of us. Today's work on the tiny house consists of doing all of the things that I have been putting off. Some of you can probably see there's bits of OSB that are missing and there's areas where I still need to add house wrap. And the honest truth of why I haven't done those certain areas is I do a majority of something and then I get bored of it. And when I get bored of doing that particular task, I then move on to try and give myself a break from that thing. And then I inevitably don't ever want to go back to doing it. So that is part of the plan for today. And before I forget, massive thank you to the person who messaged me saying remember to add a packer under the skylight when installing it. And if it wasn't for you saying that, there is no way I would have remembered that, because I had completely forgotten that that is what you do when you're installing panes of glass, is you add a packer, which if you're not sure what they are, they're just different depth pieces of plastic and you get them in a big bag of loads of different sizes and you put one under each corner of the glass. Now, the reason you do this is all of the moisture in the air of your house, no matter how ventilated, eventually some will condense on the inside pane of glass on your window. Now, what these packers do is give a little bit of a perimeter gap around that pane of glass, so when the water condenses and turns into water droplets, it can fall into this gap. Now, that gap is super important because then when the house heats up again, it can make that water evaporate and leave through normal ventilation, or you've got a dehumidifier or whatever going on. It allows that water to escape. In comparison to if the pane of glass is just sat straight down onto the timber, well then that water gets stuck in between the glass and the timber and it kind of gets trapped, and then that water will just stay there forever and eventually it will start rotting that piece of timber, and it's just not a good look. So massive thank you to that person and everyone else who is offering advice and suggestions. It's really helpful, so thanks a lot for that. Something else that I've got to also start thinking about is waterproofing this outstand. Now, when it comes to installing a skylight, the upstand is very easy to waterproof. You just overlap epdm, which is just a couple millimeters of rubber that goes on your roof, and then to protect the gaps where the wood is exposed, you use uncured rubber, and then on the corners you use corner patches. With regards to the outstands, is I don't have epdm on the walls. I have got Tyvek. Now, there is an idea in my head that I could kind of use the Tyvek as I would use epdm to go over the outstands, but the issue with that is house wrap, be it kind of waterproof because it's a breathable membrane that lets moisture out of the house but stops moisture going back in. That doesn't mean it's waterproof, and it is waterproof, it really is, but it also isn't. Eventually some water will get through if exposed to the elements. But even if there's a tiny chance that water gets in, I just don't want to risk it, because you've got to think these outstands now jut out from the house, meaning that the rain falling is going to land perfectly on the top of the outstand. Now, yes, I'm going to have battens and cladding, which is going to reduce that distance, but eventually water will land on it. Another thing, the water lands on the top of it, that water will run down the sides of the outstands, and it won't just flow down the outstand area, it will also then eventually run out along the Tyvek and behind the cladding system. So I need to make sure this is super waterproof, and my thoughts on how to do that is flashing tape. If you don't know what flashing tape is, it is tape that is waterproof, super sticky, and it is the modern day equivalent of LED flashing and way easier to use. Now, the things you've got to remember when using flashing tape is to ensure that water cannot get underneath it. You've always got to think of layers. And the best way, in my opinion, to get your head around thinking about the layers is just think of how slates work on a roof, just how the top slate has then every single slate tucked underneath it, so water flows off of it and never gets stuck behind another tile. So I've got to kind of replicate that with this flashing tape. I bought 225mm flashing tape because I thought it's better to have more than less, and if need be, I can cut it down. Now, something I've also got to think about, do I install the flashing tape before I put the skylight on? Because normally what you would do is sort out all of the epdm, the uncured rubber, all of that stuff just like you do on the roof. But for some reason my brain thought that I could just install the skylight now and then do that at a later stage. But upon thinking about this right now, I don't think that is the best thing to do. Now, the reason for this is I wouldn't be able to cut the flashing tape because I wouldn't have the straight edge of the outstand. Also, I'm pretty dumb for thinking that I'd actually be able to maneuver the flashing tape and move it all around when there's a perimeter piece of glass sat on the outstand. So that was almost a very big mistake, because I genuinely, up until recording this right now, was kind of thinking, oh, I can just add silicone and just send it tomorrow or the next day and just put the skylights in, so at least it feels somewhat watertight, because at the moment I haven't got any windows on the house. So part of me wants to rush it, the other part of me saying you really can't afford to mess this part up. Now, the only issue is that I have got 4 of these skylight windows, which equals quite a lot of time to do all of this work. And the thing that always annoys me is you only get good at something on the last attempts that you do. And I can almost guarantee it will take me 50 minutes to waterproof the first outstand, and then the last one will take me 2 minutes. Now, the positive news is once those skylights are in, my house is now going to be fully, well, pretty much waterproof. Obviously, I've got to then add the window in the bathroom, and then I need to batten all of the walls so I can then clad them. So as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe if you're new, sign up to my weekly newsletter. Don't miss out, start now, and I will see you next Tuesday. No, it's Tuesday today, to Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow.